Welcome to Urban Grown Stories, the companion podcast for the Urban Grown Tour, hosted by Cultivate KC. You will hear from urban farmers, growers, and advocates across the Kansas City metro area. From the history of local food in KC to the challenges new farmers face and the impactful ways you can get involved in our local food system, this story collection will leave you inspired, informed, and hungry for change.
In this episode, we visit George Washington Carver Farm to hear from Jason. This is their story.
I'm Jason Copeling, and I'm basically the farm manager here at George Washington Carver Farm. It's really just been me the last 3 seasons, so I say farm manager, but I'm kind of just every role. And what we do here, we grow kind of like the top 20 fruits and vegetables that people like for our neighborhood, and then we do a variety of different restaurants and farmers markets and that kind of thing, but just kind of like your classic urban farm growing situation. So we had some pretty unique challenges. When I first came in the space to check it out, see what we could do, it was 2021, I guess. And I came over here with a shovel, was going to maybe do a little bit of soil testing, just kind of see what we were working with. And we put the shovel in the ground and realized that it was gravel. And I learned that it was gravel fence to fence in every direction, 100% gravel. And the gravel is about 12 inches worth. So there's no really tilling or removal or anything clever like that. It was like, okay, is this even possible? You know, it was kind of a gut punch at first because I was excited about the space. So there was that, as well as not having a source of water. So it was like no soil, no water. Let's do it. So those are the biggest challenges. And over time, we found ways to resolve those. I mean, with the water, we eventually, for our second season, got a grant that got city water installed. So that's obviously a game changer. This wouldn't really be possible long term without that kind of thing. So yeah, with no soil, we've had to get clever collecting wood chips and having them break down over time. So that didn't happen right away. We've also brought in a couple trucks of compost. The reason last year and this year are in such better shape than we first began is those wood chips are now broken down really well, and it's some of the best soil I've ever worked with. So that's definitely the biggest challenge, is just the site itself was like, from any other vantage point, no one would bother doing this. There's also this aspect of I'm a little bit spoiled in the sense that I didn't have to go find a site. Because if I would have been in that position, I never would have chosen this site, honestly. There's nothing desirable about it. But the church that I attend owns the property. COVID had gotten rolling and all of that, and he was really encouraging a lot of us existing gardeners to increase our growing. Just things were getting a little weird, supply chains, we weren't really sure. It was hard to tell what was really what was going on in the world. So we thought we would increase our gardening, and my wife and I had just downsized, and so I didn't have any gardening space. So I was like, well, let me see if I can use some of these empty lots that the church just acquired. So that's why I'm here at this site, so I can't really speak too much to like the struggles of getting land and all that, because I know it is hard. But for me, it was more like, well, here we are. This is like what we'll use by default. Mm-hmm. And I think that's also why I decided to really push through the adversities at the beginning. So I had spent 22 years working in grocery stores in the produce departments and then being a corporate produce buyer. So I had a pretty good idea of what people like to eat and which people like to eat what. I wasn't, knowing my context in this neighborhood, I wasn't really going to try to grow endive and radicchio. Just being honest, right? Like there's it's like know your audience, you know what I mean? And so that was a big part of it, is like, I feel like I had a pretty good handle intuitively of what I should be growing. At the church community, I did a little survey with them as well, just to get an idea of like, hey, if we do this farm thing, what would you want us to grow? And so doing that survey also helped confirm what I thought I already knew. I've just spent so much time slinging produce one way or another. It really was just like confirming. Like, I don't think there were any like curveballs in there, to be honest with you. I was like, okay, here we go. That's what I thought. I didn't get a lot of encouragement at the beginning, to be honest. I think a lot of people were like, you're going to do what over there? That's not going to work. And it was hard to not listen to that because I think deep down I kind of felt the same way. But there was still part of me that thought like, I really think this might be possible. But, neighbors walking by was probably the most encouraging thing. Not that the church community was, I don't want to make it sound like it was more negative than it was, but the neighbors that walked past and had seen this lot go from, over 40 years to go from houses to an empty lot to a parking lot to just an abandoned pile of trash. When they saw me, they were kind of like, "Hey, what are you doing? Like, this is interesting, you know?" And they would kind of perk up and get excited, like, "I don't know how you'll do that, but that'd be great. Even if you get the trash out of here, it's better than it was." So that actually probably kept me more motivated than anything, was seeing the neighbors' response, especially the older neighbors that have been around for so long and have watched the neighborhood decline steadily. I think there was a little sparkle in the eye of like, hey, maybe we can recover something here, So that's always been like one of the biggest motivators, I think. I mean, it's a neighborhood that at one time was beautiful, right? And it still has a lot of beautiful people in it, but there's also a lot of trash, right? There's a lot of stray dogs. There's a lot of lack of attention, if that makes sense, neglect. Whether it's, you want to call it systemic neglect or on the personal level neglect, or, sometimes things just get away from you and it's not necessarily your fault. It just becomes more than you can handle. So things get neglected that way too. But so this is a neighborhood that has experienced a lot of neglect of different kinds over the years. There's been a lot of wonderful people that have been holding it down as best as they can. So that's why I say there's still a lot of beautiful people in this neighborhood. It's been really great. We've lived in the neighborhood for 10 years. We're not just commuting to the growing space, right? Like, we are neighbors. And so we are committed to this area. We're not just committed to the garden or trying to save something from the outside or any of that kind of stuff. We're neighbors. That's why we want to be here. Neighborhood definitely has a reputation of poverty and everything that comes along with that, whether it's crime or a lack of education or whatever. What we've found as residents, as neighbors, is that those stereotypes aren't quite accurate. Things are never really as bad as they're labeled or marketed as. That said, there are real challenges in this neighborhood, and there's a real education or knowledge barrier, I guess. There is a lot of people, they know they should eat better than they are. They don't know how to do that. And then when they learn how to do that, they don't know who can help them do that. So I have a lot of people that'll come by and are excited. They want to come in. I give a lot of tours, and they don't really know what they're looking at, or like, what's the next step? Like, I'm excited, but now what? I like to describe us as an oasis in a food desert. So whatever kind of food desert this is, it's becoming an oasis for neighbors, whether it's for food or rest from the city or whatever. We have people come and just sit by the pond and get some quiet. It's strangely quiet here for some reason. The first few years especially, we have a CSA program that has been the bones of what we do. This kind of keeps us going. And that started with, the first season especially, it was great to have a church community to tap into as kind of a starter market and see if I can get 15 people to buy into this, I think we've got something. And I think that first year we had 18 CSA members, sight unseen, right? Like, they were just trusting me that this was going to work out. So I'm very grateful to all of them. But the CSA program has become less and less necessary as the bones, if that makes sense. So we still have it, but I think this year we have maybe 17 members. So it's not necessarily growing, right? But it is an important part. So other than that, we sell to a handful of restaurants. I've sold a little bit the last 2 years to the grocery store at 31st and Prospect. And we do a market at the farm on Saturdays, May through October. And then we do a farmer's market in Mission, Kansas. I'm open to doing some other markets out there, but really the goal would be to build up clientele in the neighborhood. What I've always said is I would quit all that other stuff if we could just sell stuff in the neighborhood, whether that's here at our own gate or the local grocery store or things like that. But I would quit all the other markets and all the other programs if we could just keep it here in the neighborhood. In some ways, and I don't mean to insinuate anything here, but it's hard sometimes to sell something to someone when they don't want that thing. I have to also convince people they need it sometimes. But I say that with all humility in the sense that I was once on that end of things. So there's no judgment there. I literally came from that. And so it is what it is. It's just a fact. So one thing we did a lot last year, spilling now into this year, is a lot more growing beds for cut flowers. So that's one thing that we'd like to be able to take that to market, would be some kind of bouquets. But chickens are really the thing that if we could increase that somehow and still be within city guidelines, that's what we would do. I've been joking since we got the chickens 2 years ago. I've been joking I could just quit everything and do chickens. The demand for eggs is insane. So when it comes to the neighborhood and what neighbors want, the produce is great. Get excited. When they discover that we have chicken eggs, I mean, they're like lined up Saturday morning before we open the market. I sell out of eggs in the first 30 minutes. It's like I could have 200 chickens probably and sell all those eggs, no problem. So, but doing that in the city is a real challenge, right? I'm not aware of a way to really do that where the city is also happy with you. It would have been the first winter after we got the chickens. We let the chickens kind of free range across the farm, which is 2/3 of an acre. So it's not giant, but it's a good amount of space for 15 chickens. And just having those few chickens work the ground, I mean, they're obviously fertilizing everywhere that they go, but the digging and eating the grubs, last year I had the least amount of bug pressure I've ever had. So the first 2 seasons, obviously everyone's got insect challenges, but after I let the chickens work the ground, just that one winter, the following season, it was a noticeable difference. So I was really bummed I couldn't do that this last winter. I'm hoping it doesn't come back to bite me, but having the chickens just work the land as they please, it makes a real noticeable impact. It's been me the first 3 seasons, largely because, you don't make a lot of money doing this. And so I've made enough to pay my bills during the season, but then in the winter, I've got to do something, right, to supplement. Our goal obviously is to get to the point where it's all self-sustaining and we can afford a crew of some size. And I think the space is big enough that once it's all operational, I think that's absolutely possible. But we really are continually developing more and more space here. And it just takes time because we don't have proper soil. But we got a grant last fall that basically pays for our current one crew member that's not me. And the hope there is that by having one more person here, we'll be able to be productive enough to actually pay for itself in the end. And so far that's held true. I think that this will kind of be the seed money, so to speak, to really get us over that hump and be able to sustain another crew member. So that's one side of it. The other side of it is that, as I get older, and I had a serious car accident about 1.5 years ago. So I can do this, but I'm not getting any younger. And so I think that my personal approach also is to kind of fade into the background and become a manager a little bit more. It would mean I'm not really drawing a true salary from here, but I'd still like to remain involved, provide guidance, crop planning, training, all that stuff. And then the other aspect as well is that my crew member is my son. And so he's really gotten into the old times of taking on the line of work that your father does. So he actually approached me with that. And so I'm like, okay, well, I'll teach you everything I know. So there's that too, where it actually might make it easier. Keeping things in the family solves a lot of economical problems that we have in our modern context. We've broken up families and social fabrics in every direction so that the things that used to make our ancestors wealthy, we don't have those anymore. And so obviously everyone operating individually makes everyone poorer, right? So we're trying to kind of combat that as well and keep everything in the family, so to speak. I feel like if a potential or aspiring grower were listening to me, I'm the worst example because I've done nothing to find grants. I've done nothing to I've really just trusted, and there's a lot of prayer that's gone into this place. Like I can't give a real good pattern or formula of we'll just do A, B, and C. And I have this program for success. I suppose I do, like in the sense that this is working, but I think my story is probably going to be the anomaly. So that said, I have a friend who works for Whole Foods, and she approached me and said, "Hey, Whole Foods does this grant for food security, etc. Would you be interested? Could I recommend you guys?" I was like, "Sure, why not?" And I used to work for Whole Foods for a long time, and so there's a little bit of a connection there still. Probably the biggest grant that we've gotten is last fall. We got a grant through the Missouri Department of Agriculture. It was another food security grant. And that was a real sizable grant that really has transformed the space. But I didn't go looking for that. Someone else in the grower scene, so to speak, I don't know why, but asked me if I knew about this grant. And I was like, I've never heard of it. And so she sent me the link and I applied, and one thing led to another. And that's really transformed the space entirely. It's been a big game changer for us. I've done everything I can from the very beginning to try to build this place to where it can be a sustainable business. Because my feeling has always been that whenever the day comes that grants dry up, I'm going to dry up. And that's not a business model. And I'm not poo-pooing on any other models of how people do it. But for me, that makes me feel like I'm the charity. But I don't want to be the charity. We're trying to work out here, work hard to make a living, etc. And now we're seeing some of the grants get tied up, and there's these big question marks, right? So I don't want to say I told you so, but yeah. So the grants are great, but we do not plan on them, and we don't count on them in any way at all. I mean, relationships are everything. And as I'm now, at or past midlife, we'll find out and see, I guess. But relationships are everything, and just don't burn bridges, and don't be a proud jerk. Be nice and kind to people, because you just never know when you're going to cross paths with people again. It's happened to me time and time again where I have burned some bridges. I learned the hard way. Relationships are everything. This idea of being self-sustaining, kind of like removing yourself from a group or a network and then being able to exist on your own, like that, nothing in nature operates that way. Nothing in the world operates that way, really. So that's some kind of fantasy, in my opinion. The happiest people, the strongest people, the healthiest people are networked and have good, healthy relationships with some kind of community. And food brings people together. It's not just fuel for an individual. Like, food brings people together. People that are in this industry, they get it. Even if we're not all sitting at a table eating food together, just there's something about being connected to the food that it's like we all get it. It's like you can see it in each other's eyes. Like, and just having a shred of humility to ask questions. And when someone asks, "Do you know about this?" Don't say yeah when you don't. Like, just listen and soak in as much as you can. I would say, like, one of the most impactful things for me that I didn't know was going to be impactful for me was I became a corporate produce buyer for Whole Foods in Northern California. And I ended up spending a fair amount of time going up and down the coast, onboarding, and just working with small organic growers along the coast. And aside from just like my daily work, I'm at these farms a lot, just observing, asking questions. I don't know why. I mean, my daily job was sitting at a desk, but asking questions about how they do this or that and whatever. And then when I find myself here 10 years later, it's like, oh, I can think about Tomatero Farm and what Adriana was telling me about strawberries. So things like that, like, just always ask questions. Don't be too proud or embarrassed or whatever, like, especially if you're young. If you're young, like, you need to soak up everything you can from everybody you come in contact with. As I've been in this neighborhood now for a decade, and I drive around my own neighborhood or walk around or whatever, the empty lot that we've turned into this little farm, well, every one of these neighborhoods, especially on the east side, has empty lots like this. Every neighborhood could have its own farm. And when I start thinking about that, I'm like, wait a second, that's really inspiring. That's actually kind of a beautiful vision. It actually doesn't even have to be about poverty and food deserts and all of that, even though that's good and necessary. It could also just be like, let's do this because it's good, right? Like, what if we did that in every neighborhood, wealthy or not wealthy? That just seems like a good way to be, a good way to design a city. Personally, I would love to see all of these empty lots. Like, can someone develop a program that trains growers? I don't know what the model needs to look like. I don't have the answer, but that's what I think would be really cool, is if there was some kind of way to develop small kind of micro farms, I suppose, into some sort of loosely, not maybe not truly centralized, but some sort of loosely connected network of micro farms to feed people. I think that would be really awesome. But right now with the city, at least with my interaction with the city, it doesn't seem like there's really a true way forward for that. And then lastly, this is just kind of like my personal stance. I think it would be good for the city to open the way for those things. I don't think any of us really want the city to be in charge of that. I don't think we want the city actually running our food system. We just want them to give us the space to do it.
Food for thought. How can you help support your local food system? Start with buying local through CSAs or your local farmers market. Volunteer at your local growing space, cultivate your own food, or voice your support of urban growing to your elected officials. Visit cultivatekc.org/urban-grown-stories for more information. For more on the growing site featured in today's episode, please check the show notes. Thank you for listening to Urban Grown Stories, a podcast brought to you by Cultivate KC in partnership with KC BizCare. Urban Grown Stories is hosted and produced by Jessica Garcia, with interviews recorded and edited by Kara Harbstreet, a Kansas Local Food Fellow with K-State Research and Extension. Production and editing support from Eric Hemphill and Ami Freeberg, with intros provided by Cultivate KC staff. Keep growing, Kansas City!